Hello everybody and welcome to the Import-Export Hub channel weekly newsreel. Your host Bogdan here. I hope that you are all doing great, and without prolonging this intro too much, I will jump directly to the quiz question for this week. It involves Pakistan and it goes like this. So to whom did Pakistan export the most in terms of value, of course, in 2021? And the options here are China, the United States or the United Kingdom. And guys, the correct answer is the United States, to whom Pakistan exported some $6 billion. It was followed by China with $3 billion, if I remember correctly. While the third option, so the United Kingdom, was the third biggest export destination for Pakistan in 2021 with some $2.1 billion. And now that you know Pakistan's main export destinations, let's see together the Freightos index and how it behaved since I last covered it. And basically from $4,362, which was the index on week 38, fell to $3,699. So we have here more or less a 15% drop, even though the overall volatility here is zero, because it measures the week over week volatility. But let's face it, it's safe to say that the nosedive continues when it comes to spot rates. In terms of big movers for week 40, the main actors, if you want, were North America, East Coast to North Europe sub-index was up 30%, while on the other side of the spectrum, we have here a 22% drop, contraction, on the sub-index connecting North Europe to China. Now moving on to the main head holes, as usual I will start with the Trans-Pacific ones, and we have here an 18% drop on the sub-index connecting China to North America West Coast, so basically $2,435 in absolute terms, and the $6,290, just 9% drop on the other Trans-Pacific head hole, this time connecting China to North America East Coast. For the crossways ones, things are not looking good either. In Europe, if you want, we're entering the airward territory. Still room to adjust, and we have here a 10% drop on the sub-index connecting China to North Europe, and a small 7% on the other head hole, so connecting China to the Mediterranean. And my guess, guys, is that the times when, I don't know, carriers were begging for business are not far away, with all their blank sailings, service cancellations, or I don't know, charter renegotiations or scrapping activities. And my only desire here is that the small BCOs, importers and exporters and so on, won't forget how they were treated in this last year or 2 years, and that we'll negotiate better. And I really hope that they will not have such a short memory. Anyways, moving on with the news here. The first one comes from Vietnam Plus, that VN, as it seems that even though soaring inflation, rising production costs and volatile exchange rates, and guys, read here how the US dollar appreciated, caused a lot of difficulties. Exports from Vietnam maintained quite well, according to this article, up almost 18% than the same period last year. All this thanks to the early resumption of economic activities and the free trade agreements Vietnam is having. And I've said it and I will say it again, Vietnam gained a lot of business from China. And yes, labor intensive business, but still business. And my guess is that this is only the beginning. And guys, for me, an important marker, if you want, is the presence of a local container shipping line. And when I will see a Vietnamese container shipping line with, I don't know, a global scope and reach, then I will know that Vietnam is embarking really on becoming one of the manufacturing or assembly hubs of the world, pretty much like China was, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. Until then, we can debate for as long as we want if Vietnam is a Chinese proxy in terms of exports or not. So let's wait together and see if Vietnamese container shipping line in the future will emerge. Now, moving on to my second news, this one comes from USDA's website, and basically it covers the Indian almond imports. It's a really useful report if you're an, I don't know, an Indian importer or from an almond exporting country. I will only highlight two things here. The first one is covering the forecasts for almond imports in India, as it seems that there will be a slight decrease from the previous year because of inflation and the rupee depreciation. And the second thing that I wanted to highlight is that even though we have these bottlenecks, India will continue its high demand for nuts, especially almonds, walnuts, and pistachios. And again, if you're working in this business, I highly recommend you to check this 12 pages report. And guys, speaking of reports, I have another one coming again from USDA. So thanks USDA. I couldn't have done this video without your support, but this time it covers Turkey's export ban on a couple of agri products. And I see that on this report, the US office in Ankara is using Turkey instead of Turkey. So clearly, we know, guys, how much the US is loving Turkey. But anyhow, this is a political gossip if you want. So coming back to the report here, well, it provides some information on the status of Turkey's export ban on certain agri exports since the beginning of this year, with the intent of, I don't know, stabilizing the supplies and to somehow alleviate rising food inflation and prices. And even though the export ban on some products like, I don't know, olive oil have been lifted, there are a couple of export bans still in place, especially on staples such as meat, pulses, eggs, I don't know, tomatoes, and sunflower oil. And you have here the list with all the HS code. I will leave the link in the description below as well, so don't hesitate to open it if you're interested. And now moving on to my second news. This one comes from New Zealand's Foreign Affairs and Trade website. And basically it's a really, really nice roundup. And here I will cover just two stories. The first involves the EU Commission, which apparently proposed a draft law to prohibit the sale of the EU on the EU market, of products made with forced labor. And see here the Uyghur problem and how China settled the case last week, if I remember correctly, in the UN Council. If you're interested, of course. And the second story involves Thailand, as the economic growth is recovering, with a forecasted growth of the economy in 2022 at 3.3%, thanks to the investments in electric vehicle production and renewable or alternative energy sectors, as Thailand's focus is to reduce emissions and grow the renewable energy sector. So that's about the roundup coming from New Zealand's Foreign Affairs and Trade website. And now I will move to my last news. Bear with me, it's coming from freightwaves.com. And guys, I have to admit, for quite some time I was asking myself the same question. If supply chain crunch is easing, why is inflation so high? And here, Greg Miller, sorry, Greg, the author of this article, takes us back in 2022 when there were talks about transitory inflation and surging consumer prices that were blamed on the supply chain crisis. It points out how the inflation rate and all the major indexes measuring supply chain performance or freight rates are diverging right now. And we see almost, I don't know, 9% inflation rate in the United States, with a global supply chain pressure index at 2%. So almost the same as it was back in January 2021, and much, much lower than January this year. And of course, it begs the question, why hasn't supply chain easing helped inflation? And we're given here two possibilities. Either the supply chain was at least something of a red herring, either that supply chain pressures are indeed easing, but they're still way above pre-COVID levels, which in other words is not over yet, so the positive payoff for inflation is yet to come. Personally, I think that the story with inflation has a lot of causes, from the helicopter money poured back in 2020 and 2021, freight rates, of course, and the supply chain bottlenecks, to the uncertainties hovering Europe right now in terms of gas. And with all the monetary policies in place meant at tackling inflation, it still lags until these policies fully dissipate into the entire economic system. It's just my guess. And I think that we need to give those policies a little bit of time until they fully kick in. So guys, with this being said, that's all for today. Thank you all for watching. I really hope that you are still awake. Don't forget to hit whatever button you like up below this video. And as usual, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.